public today. That's,
We didn't hear you, sorry.
Oh.
I was muted.
oh, hi, Jacob. Do you want to announce yourself for roll call?
I am Jacob, thank you.
All right, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the meeting minute?
I make a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Was the second?
All opposed? All right.
Did you catch that, Angela, who did, okay?
On to the public hearing. So there are 3 items within land use code updates that we need to look at. Sean just told me that the urgency to do so has been kind of pulled back, but I think we should just try to make our way through whatever we can today so that at least our part is done and ready for when the BOCC wants to officially make some updates to the land use code. The first is the natural medicine business language. We have gone back and forth a couple of times with BOCC. And our packet had the updated language. So the move here would be to make a motion to officially adopt or suggest to the BOCC that they officially adopt. Yes.
I just need you to certify that this is your version of this,
Okay.
but, you know, because we went back and forth with some
Yeah.
BOCC suggested edits. And then you made comments on that, and I took your comments and I followed what you said,
Mhm.
and provided this copy, which is your recommendation,
Okay.
not recommendation with their edits.
And do we need to do that by official motion? Probably,
Well, let's not do that because
okay,
if you could just say, yeah, this is gonna be the certified copy, when we get to the place where we'll do the motion. You know, for all of these, we'll
Right.
do them all together and I'll
Okay.
incorporate it in a revised
Okay.
land use code.
sure.
But I mean, if you can give me the consent that this is your certified version of this natural medicine
Yeah.
business amendment. Then I'll save that. And it'll be ready to go when the time comes.
Perfect. Anyone have any comments on this language that was presented in our packet? Any final edits or desires to change it anymore?
No, it looks good.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, I'm feeling all right about it.
I'll save this then, and then again, when it comes time, I will incorporate it into a revised full land use code, you know? It's amendment, and then we'll make a motion at that
Okay.
to,
Not at this meeting,
not this meeting, sorry.
okay.
There was an urgency to try to get these
Okay.
things, you know, these amendments,
So this amendment will come back to us in the
It will.
form of an amendment to the land use. code.
Like a full,
At that point,
Yeah.
that's
right.
Be certified to the.
that's right. That was the intent originally for
Okay.
today, but the urgencies and is no longer urgent, so.
Okay.
then the second order of business, is this battery energy storage system amendment to land use code. That's, you know, where a lot more of new language that we haven't considered before is, and then there's some kind of, you know, basic minor revisions to look at too. My suggestion would be that we spend most of our time looking at the battery energy storage
Mhm.
systems, especially considering that there's no urgency on the other things. Those will come back to us if we run out of time. I don't know if we want to set kind of like a time frame for today,
Yeah,
how long we want to work on this, or which sections we want to make sure we get through, but
yeah, I think you should set a time limit and we just go as far as we can. and
That's right.
As much as we can.
yeah,
And if you'd like, I could kind of lead us through a little bit, like, I think, a good place to begin is to just see, the sections of the code that would, similar to natural medicine business, we'd be updating the land use, the table 2.b. And we'd be adding 2 lines for battery energy storage systems, one for tier 1 and one for tier 2, if we continue to keep these tier distinctions, which is a matter we've discussed. The next thing that would be good to look at is at the very end, start with the definitions, so we know what we're talking about, with tier 1 and 2. And then we can go back up and just go page by page. That sound like a good plan?
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'd say let's see where we get within an hour. If it seems like we're still really working on things and making some good progress that we want to just kind of wrap up. Maybe we can extend it a bit, but if we feel like either there's a lot more to cover or we're kind of there. I'd like to shoot for about, 6:30, 6:45,
Okay.
wrap up.
Sounds good.
So also, staff will be helping out here to do any kind of, Google searches or Gemini questions
Okay.
or Everett's got some staff comments that we have made as we've done revisions of this that he might interject along the way.
Okay.
Brittany will be maintaining like any suggested edits
So
in this
speak.
version that we have up here on the screen.
Okay.
So by the end of this, we'll just have hopefully everything captured.
Was Lance gonna be here tonight, or did I miss that? He was not gonna be here tonight, okay.
So the other section of the code that would be, that this amendment would affect would be chapter 14, definitions. Some of the new definitions would be battery energy storage system tier 1. Means a rechargeable energy storage system consisting of batteries, battery chargers, controls, power conditioning systems, and associated electrical equipment designed to provide electrical power to a structure or provide electrical grid related services where the aggregate storage capacity of the system is at least 600 kilowatt hours, but less than 5 megawatt hours. So this is tier 1. Then tier 2 means the same thing. Okay, I won't reread all that, but it's just 5 megawatts or greater. So that's really something that we need to really wrestle with, because that's after we went through developing the standards with the consultants' help. We kind of felt like maybe all these standards should just apply to both, and we should just dismantle this tier 1, tier 2 distinction really, and just have a distinction between over 600 kilowatt hours or under. But that's something to think about, okay? National Fire Protection Association, there's definition for that there, and then NFPA standard 855. So those are the definitions. I mean, read them for the sake of time here, but if we want, then we can go up then to page, the top here and begin at the beginning. This is gonna be a good way to go through this.
Should we talk about tier 1, tier 2 first? Because that seemed to be the burning issue that you wanted, and I don't know what to say about it, but what kind of input have you had? Do some of these exist? Where?
So, one way to think about the tier 1, tier 2 distinction is just kind of, what are we talking about in terms of size?
Right.
This is kind of gibberish to me, because I'm not an electrician. And Chuck, you maybe have some ideas about that. But, in terms of scale, a 600 kilowatt hour, this battery storage system can power approximately 20 homes a day. Like if a home in the course of a day takes 30 kilowatt hours per home, that would then 600 kilowatt hour, battery storage system, battery energy storage system would power 20 homes for the course of a day. So that kind of gives you an idea, at least for me, what we're talking about in terms of power. A single Tesla Powerwall, have you seen those? Those batteries store approximately 13.5 kilowatt hours. So that's just, something that somebody might have in their home, which is about half of the energy requirements for a home for a full day of energy. a typical 20-foot containerized lithium ion battery storage system can store anywhere from 500 kilowatt hours to 2,000 kilowatt hours. So a 20-foot container with lithium ion batteries could be up to two megawatt hours. So like a 5 megawatt hour, that's our threshold for between tier 1 and 2, would be like 2.5 20-foot containers essentially. It's maybe was one way to kind of think about it. So, you know, what kinds of facilities or businesses or whatever would use that kind of storage, battery energy storage system at that size between 600 kilowatt hours and 5 megawatt hours? Is there enough, reason to have that here?
If I could interject just a simplification of it. Space, number of containers. So you gotta look at it as, so your smaller facilities are just having fewer of these containment modules. That's where it starts. As it getting bigger is because they're doing more electrical demand and more storage. That becomes a footprint issue. And that's the thing, is that's really the delineation. I have researched and found other different counties and different regulations. They just say, well, if it's over this much, then it just meets this conditional use. It doesn't matter. From that point forward, they're all under this conditional use because they didn't see any reason to separate tiers, because honestly, it just goes down to how many containers. And the point of this process is to create the setbacks and everything else, which would change with the size of the facility. So the difference in facility in some of the stuff as we go through, you'll find we're gonna have a standard for a tier 1 that's not the same as a standard for a tier 2. But it's the same threshold of concern for fire mitigation. It doesn't change. The difference is the amount of service it provides and how many units are there.
You might think of like a business or something that needs a lot of power and wants to have their own battery energy storage system, right? But they're not gonna be utility scale. That's gonna be over 5 megawatts. They might be over 600 kilowatts. This would be the kind of.
tier 1 as.
That would be tier 1 as it is now. Do we want to have, them have a hazard materials analysis, financial surety for decommissioning, engineering requirements for tier 2, all the requirements for tier 2 applied to that tier 1, that could be cost prohibitive. And it could exclude certain types of battery energy storage systems for certain types of applications, like a business that maybe wanted it, or maybe an agricultural co-op that wanted to have their own solar farm and a battery energy storage that goes with it. But it's not utility scale, but it's also not like below 600 kilowatt hours. Is there really a use for that? When we originally asked the consultant to, help us draft up some conditions, this was one of the first questions they asked, and we were like, well, yeah, maybe it'd be good to have these, tiers.
And how did that specific size get decided on, or like that threshold?
I don't know, because there's not a lot of standardization across the nation yet for battery energy storage system regs.
Yeah.
It was, and that's not arbitrary.
Yeah.
There was some, reference to other jurisdictions and what they had developed. And it was just kind of I can't exactly say, why 5 megawatt hours, The more that standards develop though, as we revised them and reviewed them, the more it felt like these standards just apply to anything over 600 kilowatt hours, probably.
So by this, anything less than 600 kilowatt hours would not require any permits.
Right.
So it's like getting a generator for your home.
Right.
It's no different. Okay.
Yeah.
But as drafted, the proposed language, tier 1, the difference between tier 1 and tier 2 is tier 1 does not require hazardous material analysis, does not require financial surety for decommissioning, engineering requirements, emergency response training.
Right.
Those are the only differences.
Well, there might be more, but those I
Those are
picked
major.
out just as, for example, these are required tier 2, but not tier 1, and so.
I think it's gonna be a good idea to have, you know, two tiers at least, where, like I said, you know, the manufacturing company decides like, look, we can't afford to ever be down. We have this kind of power consumption in our facility. We need this size system ready to go. It's more than 600 kilowatt hours. I think there should be different. I think there should be different codes for those types of system versus they wanted to put a battery backup system to be able to store some of this power from the solar farm and it utility grade, like there should be more hoops to jump through to accomplish.
That was our original thinking, and maybe your thinking will stay that way, and, or maybe it'll change as we go through looking at what those hoops are, but I mean, that was the original thought, Todd. It was exactly that kind of thinking. It's like, maybe we should have this middle ground for like a smaller storage facility.
Mhm.
But then once we went through the development of the standards, then it was like, well, maybe we shouldn't. So it's one of the bigger questions to kind
Right.
of wrestle with, and, you know.
Because when the hazard takes place, it's the same.
It's the
A
same.
thermal runaway is a thermal runaway. It needs a fire hydrant, it needs separation, it needs plume diagnostics for how far that acid plume is gonna be flying around to help set your setbacks. It doesn't matter if it's one container and it's field of 30. It's still one hazardous incident.
And the emergency
It is
response is
still the same.
still has the same
It
requirement.
still needs water, it still needs buffer areas, it still needs a plume design for how much space they have to have from everything. So it really, and even then, that's what we just thought of today was, or we have them doing a plume design on one container that got fire, or are they supposed to do a plume design on all 30, 10, 15, or 4?
And I think there could be similar standards like that on both tiers, but maybe like a tier 1 is a limited use permit, and a tier 2 is a conditional.
There wouldn't be any difference in terms of like the review and the review of the standards. It's gonna be, it's a matter of, do we want to have different number of standards that we apply to these two different tiers, you know? Where there's less standards for tier 1 or more for tier 2. And I mean, again, as it went through iterations, the more we kind of tended to say it should just be the same standards for both tier 1 and tier 2, anything over 600. This is our own personal feeling, you know, but like we should go through it and then you can see kind of the difference between standards. If you haven't already.
So should we start with just the standards that are applicable to all systems
Sure.
first? Just make sure there's no comments or questions
Yeah.
about those. And then I think the meat of our discussion will be each of those standards that right now is just applied to the tier 2 and whether those should be applied to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, want to start with applicability then?
Sure.
So applicability, the requirements of this section shall apply to battery energy storage systems within unincorporated Delta County, whether cited as a standalone facility or co-located with other energy generation and or transmission infrastructure. Number 2, battery energy storage systems shall be subject to and processed pursuant to the conditional use permit process of Delta County Land Use Code. 3, battery energy storage systems shall be designed and comply with the criteria set forth in these use specific standards, as well as the standards of chapter 4, site design and environmental stewardship. Number 5, tier 2, best, I'll just say best for battery energy storage systems from here on out. May only be authorized pursuant to applicable standards in zones A35 and rural industrial commercial. Tier 1 would be A35 and A20 in rural industrial commercial.
I did have a note in something we just came up with, which was one of the requirements we should add to this is that there should be a requirement for pre-application meeting for all that's applications prior to application as a requirement to apply. It was just a thought that showed up in several of these other municipalities. I read through some of their stuff. They say you can't even submit an application until we do a pre-application meeting to help determine what it is that you propose. Just a thought.
How does that differ from other types of land uses, and whether, do we have other land uses that we require a pre-application meeting, or is that just a suggestion kind of across the board?
As it is in the land use code now, it's at the volition of the applicant. They can request it. But in this case, we require it, is what we're suggesting.
Right. Not suggest, but require.
Yeah. Let's talk about this right up front, if the pre-app meeting,
Mhm.
go over kind of like what you talked about, footprint, property. Review our requirements together.
So just kind of catch issues before get too far down the line, or be able to determine with them which tier they're in.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was wondering if I missed something here in fire suppression. It talks about adequate water supply. I always thought water was a great conductor of electricity. And if one of those batteries is on fire, you're gonna squirt water on it?
no, I think the way you put out these fires in these facilities, I mean.
Like a suppressant of some type. It's gotta
They're
be.
chemical fires, so you have to drain the battery.
You
Yeah.
don't put them out.
You don't put
They,
them out.
they use the water to keep
cool the
everything else
surrounding.
from catching on fire.
I see,
Oh,
I see.
So the thing it is, the water supply becomes even more critical at this point, because some of these units on their own have fire suppression and internal on, depending on the unit. The purpose for the water supply is that we don't want a thermal runaway to then lead to the next container and create a thermal runaway and now have a whole facility versus one container. So the fire suppression is meant to make sure that all of the surrounding area doesn't catch fire, which also goes in, we'll get into the whole no vegetation, all that stuff everywhere else. The water is to cool and keep anything else around it from catching fire. Right now, the practice from the LEPC conference with some of the fire districts down there, it has to burn, you can't stop it.
You
That's
can,
right.
there's attempts and ways that they're trying to discover how to decharge the batteries.
oh,
Because that's what you have to do to stop the
Sure.
fire, but
Their practice is let it burn and secure the area. So the idea is to cool, so the amount of water needed to keep cooling everything around it. So that thermal runaway can be contained to whichever container it's in. Is the purpose for the water, and also, you know, again, if there's vegetation outside, depends on if it ends up in a place that's got juniper pine. You're gonna be hosing down everything around it, because you also have possible explosion. And so on and so forth. So this is why the water supply is one of the issues. It's not so much to put the fire out, it's for containment.
thank you.
Okay, so should we go back to general standard? So
uh,
tier 2 would be authorized in A35 and RIC zones. Tier 1 would be A35, A20 and RIC zones.
right,
Can I ask a question? Did any of the other ones have like acreage? Because A35 suggests that it's a 35-acre zone and A20 suggests that it's a 20-acre zone, but so many of ours are subdivided in only, 5 acres within those zones.
Yeah.
Is that gonna be
I
able
think
to meet the setback
will
requirements?
come into play next step back that
Yeah.
to determine whether or not the site can
Uh-huh.
qualify. Exception, the requirements of this use specific section shall not apply to any battery energy storage system located on state or federal land. The requirements of this use specific section shall not apply to battery energy storage systems with an aggregate storage capacity of less than 600 kilowatt hours. Unless that system supplies power to an off-site facility or third-party user. While not regulated under the land use code, BESS with capacity of less than 600 kilowatt hours may be subject to reporting requirements under the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act and or locally adopted ordinances.
So does that mean a system that's less than 600 kilowatt hours that is selling to a utility or providing power to, you know, whatever, a manufacturing facility down the road, they would have to comply.
So that's what that looks like to me, how it's written, yes.
Are there inherently more dangers to that than a less than 600 kilowatt system that is only supplying energy to its own facility?
Maybe it's presuming there's nobody there monitoring it, I don't know. That's just,
That to me seems, or I would like to know why that.
Yeah, so basically you're turning it into
they
a,
had it.
your edits aren't popping up on this.
Oh,
I think it was in pertinence to the difference of becoming a commercial endeavor versus a private endeavor. It's if the energy is leaving the land, you are creating a commercial business versus a private business for your own home. Because the solar has kind of the same idea between private and person.
So if they're utilizing this system in conjunction with like a solar system on their house and they're net metering with the MEA, then they would have to, then they would be an exception from.
I don't know what net metering is.
they sell back their surplus energy.
I think that's no different than a private solar system on your home either. I think we're talking commercial selling it outright.
Not every home system has batteries.
Right.
No.
Some do, some don't.
But if a home system less than 600, under this language, if a home system less than 600 kilowatt hours, presuming most home systems are, is supplying power to a third-party user, potentially selling back to the utility, would they have to follow these standards? Even if it's a 20 kilowatt hour bank.
Sounds like it, the way it's written.
Yeah,
I would suggest that we clarify this
okay,
section and
clarify whether such a facility would be subject to the standards.
And I understand what you're saying, Everett, about it becoming a commercial endeavor. But again, what if it's an off-site facility owned by the same company or individual?
What do you mean by offsite facility?
Yeah,
Or what does this mean by offsite facility? Like you wrote all this.
Unless this is pleasant off-site facility, well, I guess too, a facility is not on the site where the storage is at.
Yeah.
I can answer that.
yeah.
So there would have to be a transmission line from this system
Mhm.
offsite to somebody else.
Correct.
Okay, well, that, I think,
Inherently, just more complex.
That's why I suggested maybe it means, it implies that like the presence of the user is not there with the battery energy storage, so it's kind of like not being.
so if a property owner owns two adjacent properties,
Right.
has his home built on one and
Yeah.
decides he doesn't want to have a solar system on that property, puts it on his property that's right next door to him.
Yeah,
Well, that is covered under the third party part of the statement.
Well, but it's off-site or third party.
or third party user, yeah.
I mean, should it just be to a third party user?
Generation.
Yeah, remuneration, maybe that would be the
Yeah.
condition.
I guess, yeah, my question is what is the purpose of this
Yeah,
language if it's because it's inherently more dangerous or problematic or whatever?
Yeah.
That we need to apply extra standards to a smaller system that is doing this? Or is it that,
Well, if there's a transmission line off the property to another, then it makes sense, because then that becomes another hazard as people may be digging with that
Sure,
property.
yeah.
You know, now we have another, potentially, I don't think the voltage is that high, but I know it's DC power, it's very dangerous.
so for example, our perimeter fence, no vegetation, and these
Mhm.
things we might
Yeah.
want to like review it for that purpose. But it's a good question.
Yeah.
I got it down and get you an answer. I mean, it's a good catch, I don't.
Because if you call 811 and nobody's the wiser that there's a transmission line that goes a half mile to a different property. How's anybody gonna avoid digging through that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Should it just be to an offsite facility and not to a third party user? Is the third party user the dangerous part, or is the offsite transmission the dangerous part, or are they?
I don't know, like in that
Yeah.
one situation, if they're adjacent properties owned by the same
Mhm.
person. I don't feel like that should be an issue. Like, I wouldn't want solar panels right next to my house either.
It's the storage, not the panels.
I understand this, okay. But they
But
put
the
a storage.
Right.
storage
don't
bank
just
right
want
next to
light
it,
or
yeah.
Daylight,
Okay, I thought you
Yeah.
were talking about.
no, yeah. I think these are gonna be commonly used in conjunction with solar panels.
Right.
Well, I just wrote to clarify whether such a facility be subject to the tier one standards. What's the purpose of this language? Is it because such a facility be subject to hazards or something, or?
Okay.
All right. So I'll get an answer for that. Standards and limitations, battery energy storage systems shall be approved when meeting applicable standards set forth in the Delta County Land Use Code unless a significant adverse impact to public health, safety, environment, wildlife, or agricultural land is demonstrated and cannot be avoided or mitigated. We had a little exception to this shall be approved. We don't know if we want to make that big of a promise.
Mhm.
Well,
I mean,
but
give conditions where that would be an exception.
I
but-
mean,
wouldn't all those things be a reason that it wouldn't be approved?
That's right, that's what it's saying. But if all of those, health and safety, and impact standards are met, then it's saying it shall be approved.
Regardless if they feel it's in the right place for it to take place. If you say shall be approved, your discretion has been removed if they meet X, Y, and Z. And as we've seen in many other projects, just because it meets X, Y, Z doesn't mean that's probably the place it should go. If you
But-
say shall be approved, you've taken out any question. You say shall be considered for approval.
That's
fine.
left open, but shall be approved
Shall be
is,
approved is you're taking out discretion if X, Y, Z are present. And
so, yeah, what was the purpose of including this, or is
Well,
this redundant, like,
It gives,
projects shall, in the land use code, project shall be approved as long as they meet standards.
that's correct.
I think it kind of gives a developer some degree of like assurance that like, oh, if I at least make sure meeting public health and safety and environment, then it shall be approved. I
think the language is okay.
Yeah,
I do, that's me. Just leave some discretion, but
okay.
Is that-
But you're still leaving it open, it says that when meeting you're leaving that open where they still have to meet those standards.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
Okay,
Doesn't that kind of go without saying though?
that's
Well,
what I mean, is it redundant?
Davis wedding venue.
yeah.
This is what I'm saying. This is what you're
That's what I-
preparing yourself for. You talked about
Okay.
not liking that we have to follow what we are bound by. This is part of what you guys have brought up for the concern that we don't have a choice. You're leaving that same problem you guys have indicated as concern in play.
Why not strike that shall be approved?
So then the land use code goes out the window and it becomes a discretionary plan.
Well, all land use code is based on time, location, and presence and the ability to show discretion. When you type in your shall be approved, that language locks you in.
Yeah,
No, yeah,
And that's the whole point, is everything has discretion. Everything you do with the land use code has discretionary and interpretary values.
right.
This strictly will strike that out.
So the purpose of this is to mitigate some of the complaints about the land use code that we've received, that it's wishy-washy and you don't, even if you follow all these standards, you go to a hearing and you don't know if you're gonna get approved or
I
not.
think that that's part of the intent of a statement like this. Yeah, it's like saying, hey, you meet these basic conditions and standards, you're gonna get approved. You can move forward so you can have some confidence. But everyone's bringing up, that lock us in more tightly than we want to be.
Significant adverse impact, that's the It's gonna be
Yeah.
significant.
I mean, I think
And then you
this.
gotta describe significant.
I know, but
I don't know why we're giving battery energy storage systems a like extra assurance over anything else that we review,
Exactly.
other than that we're trying to retroactively address some of these complaints. Like, to me, that seems like a bigger land use code language, like whether or not there's that much discretion. You know, like, I guess, is this, do we have this language under other specific use standards?
No, I mean, it is like you're suggesting, I think, a little redundant. I think it's kind of inherent throughout the land use code in the description of the different kinds of permits and the standards for those permits. It's basically stated. I don't know, I just wrote down, does this language lock us in? Should this just apply to BES? Is this necessary at all?
I think we just.
I don't see a point of
Strike it through.
that section.
I'll put that down.
I mean, I think our goal should be to create standards and code that regardless of the applicant, that we come in and if they meet those standards, like yes.
But,
Approved.
yeah,
The answer is yes, if you do these things. The answer is no, if you don't do these things.
well, what about all people that come and complain like the David? And you don't care, well, then, why are we giving them notice and letting them come in and talk about traffic?
That's a
and stuff?
great question.
And Commissioner Coons had no problem finding that the Davis venue had significant adverse impacts, and he voted against it, so.
We could start.
yeah, I think that is always a consideration, right? No matter what project we're reviewing.
Staff just checks the boxes, and then we go home.
We don't need a planning commission if every single time something goes before the Board of County Commissioners, it depends on how they feel that day and what they
Well-
decide they wanna.
Statute requires a planning commission, I'm saying that we're supposed to look at adverse impacts to public.
No, I'm not saying that everything about event centers was perfect in the way it should be,
No, it wasn't.
but
The question was of adverse, significant adverse.
The only reason I put it in there was to create this exact conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Being
Present what,
of you're saying, we're bound. So don't just turn around and bind yourself right off the bat with your first sentence on your applicability.
and I'm fine with that, as long as it doesn't, always the reason we don't wanna be bound is if enough people are mad about it. Like, we're never gonna get away from that. We will never approve anything in this room if that's our deciding factor.
it's a question whether it's significantly adverse, and that's where we decide.
All
Yes.
those neighbors think it's significant.
Like,
Whether this needs to be here specifically for battery energy storage systems. And I don't think we need to add this clause specifically in this type of use. I think it's a bigger land use code issue that I don't think we should piecemeal together. Certain uses get this like extra degree of guarantee. If we wanna add shall be approved. Yada yada to the whole, to any application we review, like that's,
Yeah,
I don't think we should be piecemealing that philosophy into the code. Where a BES shall be approved, but a solar project may not shall be approved in an event center. We can just decide willy-nilly. I don't know, that's my opinion, is that it doesn't belong right here.
yeah.
Right.
How many of you think that that whole C, point C is struck?
I'd have no problem with it,
Online
was changed to
doing
may
what
be
we
approved,
Huh?
may be approved instead of shall be.
Yeah, you could change that language, or you could just like strike that whole section. I
Either way,
We're striking it.
yeah.
mean, it's kind of already accounted for in
This is the entire land use code.
Right, like, isn't that what the land use code is?
Yeah.
Is your project shall be approved as long as
As
it,
long as you meet
doesn't do
these,
this?
that's right.
yeah.
So strike it.
See what anybody online.
Yeah,
Doesn't-
Jacob, will you raise your hand or unmute yourself if you ever have a signet, you know, if you ever wanna
Chime
add to
in.
the conversation?
Thanks, Katie.
All right,
So we thinking about striking that, that's what
right,
I'm,
thinking about striking C.
are we striking C, is that what we're thinking?
That seems to be, anyone opposed to that?
I don't think it hurts.
As long as it's addressed above, and I think it is, it's already addressed.
D,
Standards applicable to all battery. The standards of this section, 1D, are applicable to both tier 1 and tier 2. So site location and design standards. Number 1, all BESS shall be located at least 100 feet from property lines. Additional setbacks, setbacks is for tier 2 BESS may be adopted pursuant to these regulations. Number 2, no component of a BESS shall be located within the mapped area of a 500-year floodplain as mapped and delineated by FEMA. So typically we do the 100-year floodplain for a lot of things. So 500-year is the 0.02% chance of flood
Yeah.
event. So
Oh,
it's
going back that far, yeah.
pretty far, but the idea is keep it away from water, right?
Yeah.
Number 3, a vegetation-free clear space of at least 10 feet shall be maintained around the exterior perimeter fence of all battery energy storage systems, and the interior of the fencing around BESS components shall be void of flammable materials.
Okay.
So we don't really have distance of where the perimeter fence has to be around the
Yeah, storage unit.
actual, storage units. Number 4, all battery energy storage systems shall be located at least 1,320 feet, that's a quarter mile, from the boundary of any public land administered by the federal agency or state of Colorado. Now, you're gonna ask me, why is that? And I don't know. I think that the consultant pulled that out of somewhere and I haven't been able to find it.
so the general purpose being that we're not creating hazards, you know, wildfire hazards basically
Mhm.
near public land.
Right.
Correct.
Your quarter mile setback. Now, I guess, at first I thought, that's quite a distance, there could be a really appropriate, great location for a battery energy storage system that's like
Yeah.
surrounded by a bunch of BLM, where it's just right, like, not where people live, and it'd be great to put it out there. And so you don't wanna have it so restricted, they can't put in a great piece of private property in that location. But then I thought also that these are not very big facilities. I mean, like the footprint, they're in a bunch of containers and they can be put in a relatively small area, and do a lot of storage of energy. So a quarter mile isn't that much, on a 40-acre, parcel.
But again, maybe it's not gonna be a standalone BESS system. Maybe it's gonna accompany a business that wants to come in and put in their business on this piece of property and they want this type of system for battery backup.
Yeah. Well, as it is now, this is just from federal and state lands. I mean, this, quarter mile setback.
Well, but like you say, all Adobe's were,
Yeah.
could be great locations for these types of businesses.
Federal land doesn't necessarily mean it's.
Mhm.
Is this consultant available for us to ask for some clarification on that?
Yeah, I mean, any questions you want, we can continue.
I'd like to hear some clarification on why he felt like that type of distance needed to be put in there.
I thought originally, or didn't he say it was like from something in
So-
New York or?
So basically, after going through all this, this is also where I have a difference of opinion again. And that's only because I think when we get into what we're trying to mitigate on these sites isn't a normal thing. We're dealing with a toxic plume and an unstoppable fire. This isn't a grocery store. This isn't a gas station. This is unique. The plume modeling and how far that this plume will travel is what brings up the concerns, because there are other, I pulled out for different, there are some places that won't allow them to be 5,000 feet from any residential structure. Now, that's extreme. But it's all over the board across the nation in different locations. Some places are running where it's 2,000 to 5,000 feet. Others are running, if you go to San Diego, they're doing it for 100 feet. But.
So to
also-
interject here again, I feel like, to Sean's point, you know, BLM could be pretty good prime location for this stuff. I understand wildfire if we're talking national forest, but if we're talking Dobie ground, it seems kind of limiting. You know, I don't know if we strike it tonight, but depending on the answer we get back from the consultant, I don't really feel like this necessarily needs to be in there. So
I'd be curious about that distance too. Especially considering the types of state and federal land we have in this county and.
Remember, I think it might be also a state or federal requirement. That's
Well,
why.
there is gonna be some stuff in NFPA. I didn't dive that far into it. Some of that is guidance that goes into National Fire Protection zoning or code for any of this stuff. So that it could be something you pulled from the actual NFPA.
And besides all that, if you got on public land, you'd have the Sierra Club and the Friends of the Earth and all those fruitcake organizations filing lawsuits up the wazoo for it.
Now you bring up the plume of smoke that would occur. But it's more the concern of the spread of fire, not the plume, right? Cause 1,320 feet is nothing for a plume of smoke to travel.
Just so you know, it's not so much smoke. It's what's in that plume. Some of the things were brought up, like I just finished the LEPC conference. Where this was a topic that went on for almost a whole day in different variations. First things we need to understand, there's rumor that there's a way to put out these fires. Not true. They don't stop until they stop. You can put them underwater and they will continue to burn. Then it creates actual acid air coming up from underneath the water and makes the plume actually acid because you mixed water to the equation. Some of the people in the fire departments for Denver and stuff like that, other issues is if they get too close to the plume, it actually has acidic behavior and qualities that it's a one-time use for their turnout SCBAs and gear. It cannot be undone. So imagine that in public safety. How important is it to know how long that carries in the air? And for what distance before it dissipates to where it's not toxic, which is why they've taken the stance of perimeter, stay back, stay out of it. The plume modeling, which will be in the NFPA standards that we're gonna be talking about later. There's another issue where people don't realize all these different batteries, like the lithium ion batteries. There's 7 different types. These 7 different types also have proprietary ingredients. So we still don't even know what's in it that gets burned and creates in the plume because
Okay,
it's a secret.
Yeah,
But to Todd's point, when we're talking about these safety standards and 1,320 feet, like. Yeah. The plume is not what we are really going to be able to control in terms of the distance of setbacks. With these facilities in our county.
The distance of the setbacks is for the dissipation of the
Okay.
toxic material in the plume to dissipate as it get further out. We're not talking about visible.
But will that plume analysis? In of itself limit the location where we don't necessarily need to worry about whether 1,300 feet is the appropriate amount of feet, it'll be whether.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's in the NFP. We will come to that point where we're gonna ask them to do studies that do a plume analysis, which will help us with our concerns and stuff.
But when you frame it like that, I'm so much less concerned about how close we are to federal or state lands that
Yeah.
are into somebody's house.
Sure, yeah.
This is the point of these setbacks conversations. If the state's wanting to be 1,300 feet from one of these things, what about your neighbor?
Right.
Yeah.
What about schools?
Just throwing it out there. What about our infrastructure? What about our schools? What about
Absolutely.
our old folks' homes, childcare centers? The state wants 1,300 feet. You're gonna put them within 100 feet?
Well, we don't know if the state wants 1,300 feet. Someone wanted 1,300
Yeah.
feet.
Okay. Alright.
So we got
Say
the
what we
question,
need for-
BC would like
Yeah.
clarification on the distance. Is the consultant available to answer some questions?
Alright.
Fire protection.
How about we just don't allow
That's easy.
them?
Number 5, all battery energy storage system sites shall meet the applicable fire protection district standards for supply of water for fire suppression activities as determined by the fire chief or their designee from the applicable fire protection entity. What do you think of that, Todd?
I think,
Chris?
I thought maybe it doesn't.
Well, I think you're putting it back on the fire.
Point A, the BES operator shall be responsible for the full cost of all infrastructure improvements necessary to provide for adequate supply of water for fire suppression purposes. Completion and proof of such improvements shall be required prior to operation of a BES regulated.
Hmm.
The
Land use code.
use code.
I think it would be excellent for that meeting.
Okay,
I just question whether it would be.
okay, because,
Well, we've tried this with some of the commercial applications that have come through and they.
Yeah.
really don't pretty quickly,
Mhm.
yeah,
because we don't have fire codes,
right,
so.
right. I think that was a question, so also up by staff, and on occasion it was, will it be problematic since each fire district may have different standards? Also was a question. Anything else? Any other comments about number 5?
Maybe the county should adopt building codes, so we do that, even if it's.
Okay.
That's it.
Number 6, access roads to the facility must meet standards defined by the local fire protection district for access to the facility for fire suppression activities, including road depth and width requirements and turnaround areas. Access roads shall be plowed to allow for fire protection district access during winter months.
Sounds good.
Number 7, yeah,
Should there be more of an expectation of maintenance? I can imagine a lot of these roads will be, dirt or gravel where they're maintained for accessibility year round, not just during winter.
Maybe the language shouldn't say access road shall be plowed, maybe it should say access road shall be maintained for access. For year-round access.
okay,
Or it could be the county road standards. Since we already have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we already have them, let's use them.
Number 7, battery energy storage systems must be designed to minimize site disturbances. Reestablishment of all disturbed areas, including the construction access, shall maintain historic drainage patterns and permeable ground cover and minimize environmental impacts. Temporary and permanent erosion control measures shall be used as necessary to minimize erosion of the site. Anybody got any comments or thoughts on that? Number 8, to minimize post-incident environmental contamination at a BES site, all BES cabinets, modules, containers, transformers, and appurtenances shall be installed on an impermeable surface designed to collect and detain water runoff from fire suppression activities. The design of the required surface shall be prepared and sealed by professional engineer licensed by the state of Colorado. So the idea is, if there's a thermal runaway and, you're dousing water in all the adjacent, storage containers, and some water's getting over or something's coming out of the container that's, get the thermal runaway, you want those elements to be caught in some kind of a impermeable basin so that they can be removed afterward and not get, down in the soil or run off somewhere not contained. Point A, the impermeable surface or surfaces underlying BESS shall be designed to collect and channel flow toward designated collection points and include design features to prevent off-site migration. Point B, a centralized drainage system shall be designed and installed to collect all runoff generated by a firefighting event at the BESS site. Point C, the centralized drainage system shall be isolated from the storm drains and surface waters. Point D, the drainage system shall include an accessible sampling point, means for controlled pump out and overfill prevention. Any comments or questions on that?
I'm wondering where you're gonna dispose of that pump out water.
That's the point of having it, I mean, that's the whole point of having it contained.
Right.
We don't know what's in it.
You're gonna
We
rely,
have the disposal requirement.
on evaporation to get rid of it?
No, I think later on, there's, mention of a contracted service that's gonna handle these kinds of events. And so they'll have to take care of it, dispose of it, and pay for it.
Okay.
Is there a need for some redundancy, like a secondary containment?
I don't know. I mean, as it is, we're just basic goal is to contain what flows out and not let it, migrate beyond, where we can remove it.
So an engineer certified by the state, does the state have requirements for these types of containment systems that they would have to meet in their design? Where we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we just let that.
Well, an engineer's gonna put this, why is this on this translate and all this work?
Right, no, and that's what I'm asking, like, for him to do what he's supposed to do, if the state has a regulation for what these systems have to have in them, he has to include that in these types of designs. And then we don't have to necessarily worry about covering this so much in our land use code.
I would think if the state does have those kind of specs or regs, he would have to comply and know that. But if they don't, then it's up to figure it out.
Yeah, what Dave said. All right, number 9. All BESS shall be secured against unauthorized access by means of a perimeter fence or wall with a minimum height of 6 feet. All perimeter and on-site fences shall be constructed with non-combustible materials. B, locked, tamper-resistant enclosures or cabinets. C, all access gates shall remain locked except when authorized personnel are present. Gates shall include emergency personnel shall include emergency access provisions acceptable to the local fire protection district. Operators shall file access combination information with Delta County Emergency Dispatch and keep such information current upon any subsequent changes or updates.
Just a note on consistency, some of these items just use BESS, some of them say battery energy storage system, parentheses BESS, some of them just say battery energy storage system, just kind of tidy up
Yeah,
that part of the language.
okay. The leftovers from revision.
Yeah.
Number 10, warning signage shall be posted on the exterior of the fence or enclosure. It shall be clearly visible from all accessible sides. At a minimum, signage must include A, identification of the facility as a battery energy storage system. B, the type of energy storage technology used, for example, like lithium ion or some other kind. C, appropriate hazard warnings such as high voltage or risk of fire or other applicable hazard indicators. For consistency, operators shall use the symbology included in the most current version of the Emergency Response Guidebook published by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. D, emergency contact information for the facility operator or responsible party. E, signage shall be made of weather-resistant, fade-resistant materials. F, all signage must be in English and Spanish. G, directions for the public on how to report a fire emergency at the facility to 911. And then 11, no signage or fencing shall restrict fire protection district access to shut off devices, fire suppression equipment, or fire district connections. All sensible, good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing there. Okay, number 2, where are we? I don't know. We're on point D, sub point 2, construction documents. The applicant shall prepare and submit construction documents for review by the county. At a minimum, the construction documents shall contain the elements identified in section 4.2.1.1 of section of standard 855 of the National Fire Protection Association, which is hereby incorporated by reference. Do we need to know anything more about that? That reference to NFPA?
Should we just say the most current edition rather than 2023 edition? We don't have to edit this in case 15 years down the line, they have a more.
Good point.
I don't know if this is the place to put it, but surely there should be some reference to like UL listings for these systems, electrical code, more than just fire, right?
So the NFPA 855 has, it's an actual full section. And there's gonna be links to. Let's see if I can find here.
Would you call it the listing?
UL, Underwriter Laboratory.
Yeah, that's on the electrical side. And I think some of these do cross with each other. The title for 855 is a standard for the installation of stationary energy storage systems. So it's its own chapter.
So there's like an NFPA 70, which talks about wiring,
Right.
fire protection, grounding.
And I think we get into that more as we continue down these roads. But that was what I was just bringing up, what the NFPA 855 is, the actual chapter specific to the stationary energy storage system.
I think Todd's point's valid on electrical because electrical is what underlies these whole
It
things
comes
if you
into
do
it.
it wrong. So if they install electrical wrong, they're gonna get thrown around.
It comes in a bit.
All right. Noise standards. All BESS shall be designed, constructed, and operated so that the sound level produced by the system and associated equipment does not exceed a 1 hour average of 60 A weighted decibels as measured at the property lines of the subject property.
Is that a concern with these things? I just assume they'd be like, you don't even know they're running.
I don't know.
So
I know data centers have a lot of noise but I don't know. But in case they do, there's the standard. Abandonment and removal, any BESS that is not operated for any continuous period of 180 days shall be considered abandoned. The county, in its sole discretion, may notify the owner of the alleged abandonment and may require any abandoned facility to be removed within 90 days of receipt of notice. I don't know how we would know that, but.
Like how you would know what
Not
90
being
days.
used.
Oh, yeah.
There's no signs of that. So I don't know,
So if there's no like power outage event requiring, so say this is a backup power supply for the company that falls under tier one. And there's no event where they lose their primary source of power for 180 days, will that fall under this?
how do we know
Really
that?
not. I
How
know
do
you buy it, you know,
yeah.
it's like insurance, you hope you never use it. That's what I would think, but think about.
I don't know, I don't really know how this would apply or how we would, you know, monitor that or how that would be enforced at all. I'm not even sure why we need that kind of language in there. I get that if somebody leaves, I don't know.
You just walk away, they leave,
Yeah.
you wanna deal with it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, but I think, yeah, separating out what Todd's talking about from a, you know, a truly abandoned facility.
Well, you could require a report from them every 90 days as to, you know, input and output of electricity.
You have to have some way to monitor.
What if,
it.
I think you just leave it as it is. That gives you something to go for when there is an abandonment. How you figure out the abandonment's another issue.
What if it's like a backflow prevention device for your house, you have to have it inspected and tested. That way you know somebody's still responsible for it. And if this particular one doesn't turn in their inspection or testing, whatever, then that flags to the county, like, okay, there's something going on here.
yeah, is there some sort of inspection? Or test or?
I remember, imagine a scenario where this is useful.
Well,
Well, I think it is great to consider, yeah, a facility that might be abandoned on a piece of land out in the W's. That now it's full of hazardous material that we, you know, the county shouldn't be responsible for dealing with,
Or
but.
if
Imagine maybe it's reached its end of life and they haven't decommissioned it. Should be
Sure,
that kind
yeah.
of scenario,
It
okay.
could be part of the code.
Or it's
enforcement
no
process.
longer-
Oh, geez.
No longer, whatever, economically viable to operate.
Yeah, yeah. I can see where it's like no longer useful, they don't want to, they're avoiding decommission. So then therefore. Right. Yeah.
No, because usually I can do 2 phases.
Yeah,
But we don't have a way to monitor.
Yeah.
There's. It's abandoned.
Right.
We don't know that.
Gotta listen and see if it's humming.
Put your hand in.
But I mean, you know, to that point. If these are the types of risks that inherently come along with these systems, wouldn't we want them to be regularly testing to make sure things
Yeah.
are okay?
Yeah.
Just wait for a catastrophic event?
Or under the maintenance standards, things we'd have some annual review and something.
Cause I think something like that, and obviously, I don't think you have it done every 80 days, but if it's done annually, it at least in some way accomplishes this where. We're gonna have some type of an idea if somebody's abandoned the system, because that inspection is
Yeah.
not gonna occur.
Yeah.
what if, like, the heart of this is like that we need the ability to. Call a facility abandoned and demand that it is. Decommissioned and removed. It seems like we need to think harder about what. The proof of abandonment is. But I'm gonna lead this section with, like, the county. May, you know, if a facility is found to be abandoned, the county may, in its sole discretion. Require abandoned facilities to be removed. You know, abandonment may be. A facility may be considered abandoned if A, B, and C, or if A or B or C, you know. And we come up with that whatever inspection, or it's not in operation. Or it's, you know,
Here's the other thing I think we have to consider is in the event that abandonment is likely. The chances of somebody responding and complying to our,
Right.
like, not happening. Like, I go back to like the hemp food. Like,
Yeah.
there were companies set up in a 24-hour period, no assets, no nothing. When they lost their ass, gone.
Yep.
You ain't getting a hold of nobody because it doesn't even exist anymore. Like, I'm not saying the same thing's gonna happen here, but good.
Mhm.
And if abandonment is likely, the chances of somebody responding to a letter or answering the phone like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll go take care of that, pretty unlikely.
Yeah, very unlikely.
however, having it in the code gives a legal.
Sure, no, yeah,
Well,
Yeah, but I agree, I think the likelihood of a true abandonment.
So these are standards that are applicable to
All.
both tier 1 and
Yeah.
2.
Oh,
But only tier 2 has the,
Decommissioning.
yeah, and the financial surety.
Well, if they filed a financial surety bond, then they're gonna be out the money if they just sky up.
that's.
But what Sean's saying is we only have those guarantees. Currently, we only have those guarantees for tier 2 facilities. So this is the end of that. Applies to all section, which might be a good. Jumping off point of what. What regulations are currently in the just tier 2 that we think. Should apply to everyone.
If we're gonna be ultra conservative, we don't have a tier 1, tier 2, we just have one size fits all. Because if something goes wrong. You don't have a mitigation plan on tier 1, or you don't have the financial bond security, then. It's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
It's tough. But yeah, that is super expensive for anybody just to come in with a tier 1,
Right.
Yep.
but it seems like the risk is the same, the hazard, all the bad stuff,
Right.
so.
That's why the further
That's
we
why
went
you
along,
come-
we were like, well, maybe we shouldn't have a distinction, maybe we just have the same standard for
Yep.
them all. you know?
So now maybe understanding a little bit more the way you were saying before, so if they just continue to add these modules, the risk does not increase with the additional. Containers or whatever they are.
And that's the whole point, is not so much that, as a standard with a thermal runaway, like I said, if they can contain it to 1 unit, you're still talking about 1 unit creating this much disruption. How do we account for if that unit catches the next unit? Then that unit catches the next unit, how are we doing our plume modeling? Are we doing plume modeling for the entire number of containers? Or are we doing plume modeling for 1?
Well, other standards are trying to distance the modules in such a way that they won't catch on the end, so. Yeah, I don't know what the standards are for plume modeling. It's gonna have to be some kind of a justification, we're gonna need it. Contracted technical review, okay.
Yeah, what do you mean? You can translate.
Language to be to them.
Chris, follow me. Good.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are larger risks involved in larger facilities if. Whatever, completely arbitrary number, if 1 in 1,000 of these containers. Goes up in smoke. 1 in 100,000, whatever, I mean, you know, the numbers are irrelevant. The more you have on your. Property, the higher risk there is, and then you have the risk of them. The thermal runaway, is that what it's called? But the question is, if a large facility only has 1 container. With a problem and they're able to contain that, it isn't more problematic than a property with 1 container that is problematic, so.
Well, we just keep going and the tier one, tier
Excuse
two question will be
Yeah.
sort of like the table 2B question.
Ugh. I mean, when I look at these, the setbacks. So there's different setbacks required how I'm thinking of it is there anything in this section E that we don't think should apply to everyone? When I look at it, yeah, maybe we could have different setbacks given that like, it's gonna be a larger facility.
I mean, 600 kilowatt hours, it provides quite a bit of battery energy storage,
Yeah.
and that's there is precedent from other jurisdictions, like I saw New York's or something that, that was their threshold. They had 2 tiers,
Yeah.
but it was below 600 kilowatt hours and
Mhm.
above. So, I mean, it still provides a lot of battery energy storage for maybe a business or a co-op of, I don't know, a co-op kind of solar farm or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a 15 kilowatt hour generator that I figure can power critical circuits in the event of a power outage. We're talking 600, like good amount of power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go on or?
So I guess, yeah, I mean, to me, it does make sense to potentially have different setback requirements, although only tier 2 being cited to minimize impacts to hospital, school, large childcare centers. That seems like a worthy effort on all fronts. We're really talking about, risk assessment, I guess. How likely is one container or 2 to 3 shipping containers versus more than that? Are we comfortable with them being closer to those locations, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah, to me, it starts to kind of collapse on itself and it's just very arbitrary.
Mhm.
It's like, well,
Yeah.
you have 2 shipping containers full of lithium ion batteries that have a thermal runaway and you still got the plume coming from
Mhm.
them. It's just like if you had a big facility and you only had one of those,
Mhm.
modules to catch on fire, you still got the same impacts really
Mhm.
from the 2 very differently sized, facilities.
I don't believe tier one has a requirement for plume modeling where it's specifically required in tier 2.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what we're going through is what is required currently what is required for tier 2 and do we think it should be required for tier
So
1? It
tier-
seems like minimizing outside impacts is still important. For me, protection of agriculture and irrigated lands
Mhm.
seems important regardless of the size.
Emergency operations plan, I mean, you
Yeah.
still have the same requirements there.
How difficult is it for us to obtain this plume modeling?
So it's a pretty good math equation. There's a lot of factors. Chris probably knows more about it. I tried to do the math, try to figure out how I could do it, but it's pretty complicated.
So that's like, yeah, would that be
Engineer.
an engineer you hire out?
That's what they have to provide is
Yeah.
a plume modeling that meets their requirements of the NFPA
Mhm.
under that section, which is gonna talk about what metals are in there, how long it takes to dissipate, what's the recommended
They
area.
use weather models and.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
all kinds of
Really?
It gets into barometric pressure, it gets into all of these variations and that doesn't even change, but then you have to add different, which prevailing wind versus miles per hour wind versus high miles per hour versus pressure versus, it gets pretty in depth.
So.
So it's not, I mean, it seems like not, yeah, it'd be a financial burden for sure, but also not something that, staff or the planning commission could look at an application and be like, yeah, that seems like a good site.
Yeah, right. No, it'll take some technical review, sure. And it should have some bearing on the setbacks, so. We have the standard setbacks, but then plume model requires further setbacks because of the location and the wind. in that area or whatnot, you know, then it may require further setbacks.
So when we're talking about, I mean, does anyone know, Everett, do you have any sense of? When we're talking about this will be a financial burden to the applicant. To do this
Well,
hazard mitigation analysis and plume modeling, like. Like how much are we talking? Obviously, it depends on the size of the facility, but like. Baseline, if you're gonna have 2 shipping containers. Like, how much is that gonna cost an applicant to do the modeling?
And that's the whole thing, that it goes back to, it's kind of like if we ask for a traffic study, there's level 1, level 2, level 3. We still make them do it, even if we can't do them now. I mean, at that point.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what we're talking. Or if anyone knows, I'd
I
be
have no
curious to
idea
know
what
what
the
that,
costs are.
yeah.
And I'm also, again, I haven't read through the whole 855, they just put out a 2026 version.
Mm.
And that's where a lot of that information is housed, is how technical and data driven it is, but now you're gonna have to have an engineer who's certified in that application. So those are all areas that we have no idea,
Mhm.
but it's all areas that are the highest concern. That we can't determine ourselves.
So I don't know if this is anything, but it's the first one. So, 1 megawatt hour battery energy storage system. $438,000.
For the plume modeling.
No.
Oh, for
For
the
the
cost of
energy
the
storage. So
facility.
if somebody's spending $438,000 in the battery backup system, I think we can have them pay for some flip modeling.
I tend,
I like that.
That's a good way to think.
Right,
about it.
yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Like a
kinda like,
$20,000
yeah.
system,
Well-
doubling the cost.
Right.
We're not talking commercials, we're talking commercial grade
That's
is our target.
That's a good way to think
Below
about it.
600 is not commercial grade, you start moving that commercial grade.
That's a good point, Tom.
That's a better question than the AI question I asked. How much does it cost for a best plume model?
Wow.
Yeah, cause if it cost that much to do it, like.
Yeah, you would,
We're talking
that's,
some
Plume
serious
model,
money.
yeah. That's just for one.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a good way of thinking.
Mhm.
Ooh,
So, yeah.
These endeavors are generally a commercial endeavor.
oh, they have to be, yeah.
That's what we're looking at, is another solar farm investor.
Well, and like, we deal with guys that work over in the Front Range, and you get up in north like Cheyenne, like there's data centers going in everywhere. I don't foresee that happening over here,
But
but you never know.
that's right. Need to be prepared
I
for
don't
it.
know.
Well, I mean, when you're looking at that kind of money too, it's like, what's the probability of us getting one of these like 600 kilowatt to 5 megawatts? They're probably gonna be utility scale, almost all of them, I would imagine.
Mhm.
So then we're making this unnecessary kind of tier structure. I'm feeling more of that way myself.
Right.
Mhm. I think I would just, if we eliminate the tiers, make sure we really clarify that question that we had at the beginning, like under 600 kilowatt. That supplies to someone else or to an offsite facility, make sure we're not accidentally catching. Homes or small businesses that are. Or, transmitting to their adjacent property or to. Just make sure we're truly talking commercial scale when, and not accidentally catching people in these regulations.
So back up to that first, the 600 kilowatt.
Yeah, and I don't know how to, not, the 600 kilowatt is not my problem, it's that slight
Yeah,
unclear area of offsite facility or third party user.
And it is weird trying to find information on the under 600 kilowatt designs and what they really function for, because I had the same, what's the where's the line,
Well, I do imagine as, energy consumption changes, as energy sources change, we might see more and more battery storage, as people, we just don't really know exactly where it's going, but it's obvious that these are becoming more and more prevalent, so.
So what you're asking for is what would be what we're looking at is where's that 600, where is that sitting? I mean, really, what are we looking at?
No, I'm not, no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying earlier there was some confusion because it says, these are the regulations of 600 and above. Unless you are below 600 and you're transmitting offsite or to a third party. So I'm worried about the below 600 transmitting to an offsite or a third party. And maybe they're only a 20 kilowatt hour, but for some reason what they're doing catches them in these excessive regulations. Like, I think we're clear that if you're spending $500,000 to do this, you should be investing in the plume study. But I don't want a small business or a home user to accidentally be caught in this because of that language.
Yeah.
I understand, and I think we put some questions in the comments
Yeah.
on that part that will help us to avoid that.
That's what I was trying to write down. What do we mean? Is this overkill is kind of how.
Yeah.
This is what I worded as, this is overkill. And how do we find the one?
So do we wanna go to the tier 2 standards and then where's everybody at with like the
Oh, yeah.
distinction
We're
in
at-
1 and 2 and
We're already at 7 o'clock. It's. Anyone wanna chime in if they? Seems like the consensus is that we should eliminate the tiers.
I think we should.
I think that's kind of how I'm feeling.
It seems like the risk is
Yeah.
not the same, so I don't know. if it-
Lane, what do you think?
I agree.
So I mean, this would say battery, in definitions, battery energy storage system, scratch tier 1.
Yeah.
And say it's anything that is at least 600 kilowatt hours, and scratch but less than 5,
Mm-hmm.
and then delete that system tier 2 paragraph.
and so the setbacks that are for tier 2 would apply for all above 600.
So let's see.
I think so.
Yeah, I think there
Won't
would,
that be dependent on the plume study?
Yeah,
Well,
That's
there
where-
are 330-foot
yeah,
setbacks from property lines for tier 2.
Right.
And then plume study can expand that.
and what's
Make it
for a
big.
tier, in the current language, when we're, or tier 1, the 600 kilowatt hours, what's the setbacks?
There aren't any.
There aren't
to that.
standard.
That's the point of the 600 threshold.
But I'm sure 2 had 330 foot, so.
Well, just so you know, one of the things I've seen in other languages and other different areas that did this regulation. What they had done is I read more into the one that was like 5,000 feet.
Uh-huh,
That was like in West Virginia, it said, dependent upon plume modeling, it can be reduced. So
oh,
what they're
interesting.
doing is, because this is they made a big range. And they said, dependent upon plume modeling, it can be,
Reduced down to
Reduced.
1,000.
so the idea is they came in high. Saying based on the project, we can reduce the setback, they make it a sliding scale. But they set a number,
And they stopped at 1,000 on that.
yeah. And that's the thing is, that's what, because I figured out, why do they have such massive setbacks? And that's because that's what they're saying.
So they make you prove backwards, not
Yes.
backwards.
Proof is in the pudding.
It doesn't then rely on us to extend it out beyond what we write. It depends on them to bring the setback,
Could it be
decrease the setback.
based upon results of plume study, but no less than?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. This is why
Yeah.
we're here. This is all across the board. I've spent days and months looking at everyone's different stuff. And there's many different approaches.
Yeah, it seems like we should say setbacks are dependent on the plume study. Like, what's the 330 compared to what our general, like, will that give us anything more? Where does that come from?
Well,
Yeah.
John. Bush.
Yeah, he's the one that did the research. Okay. And when I go back and look at it, again, these numbers, they're kind of a spitball attempt.
Mhm.
Also, one of the things I forgot to mention when we got to setbacks, I wanted to bring up the WUI code. Because that's gonna be a different scenario, because now you're gonna have that, if we apply WUI code theory to these BESS stations, it does change for Dobie versus Cedar Mesa. Because now we're talking perimeter zones outside the perimeter fence. With buffer zones, everything else, by saying also by wildland urban interface, buffer zones might be applicable at that point. So that all falls into those setbacks.
So what was your suggestion there last? The
Well,
setbacks
so
will be
he,
determined by plume.
yeah, so setbacks determined from results of plume study, but no less than 300 feet. And I'm only getting 300 feet from this,
Right.
this research that.
Yeah.
John put in here.
Yeah, he put in 330 feet from property line.
330, yeah, you're right, sorry.
That's fine, that sounds good to me.
But it doesn't distinguish setbacks from residences or schools or like, you know.
That's just property lines, yeah.
I think there's gotta be some.
I mean, the next line is about minimizing offsite impacts to those sort of places. Analyses which model dispersion events determined to necessitate evacuation of these facilities shall be a basis for denial or. So is that saying if the analysis says. You've got an event and it's gonna require that the hospital down the road evacuates. We're not gonna let that be. We're not gonna approve that project.
I think that was part of the other issue that we had, one of our other comments, and Chris brought it up as well. Where were our setbacks for our water sources, our critical infrastructure, things of water, rivers, streams? These things aren't specifically indicated here.
Yeah.
That's some of the other considerations that we have to get some noodling done on that.
But, I mean, what Kate's asking is that saying that if a hazard mitigation analysis requires evacuation of one of these facilities, that could be cause for denial? That's why I read it. Like,
Which,
we're just
I-
we're not gonna permit something that's gonna require in the
Right.
event of a thermal runaway, that you gotta evacuate the school or the hospital or the
Yeah.
retirement home. Like, no, that doesn't go there.
again, but none of us have any idea. If that's, I mean, we've only got one hospital in this county, so that's not a.
I think
But
that-
again, like,
Evacuating one of those facilities is a major.
yeah, the major thing,
Sure
so that
is.
makes sense that we are not allowing, but we also haven't seen one of these analyses and like the size of this project, is that likely that a hazard mitigation analysis is gonna show that? Like what are these
Well,
events
that's what
like?
one of that plume modeling and everything else saying,
Yeah.
you will have to show that, that's what they were saying.
Yeah.
Our setbacks are bam, here, and it can be reduced. Like you said, do the minimum, but the plume modeling is what they're using for the science part of it, because they're all over the board. I can't find
Yeah.
any consistency on setbacks at all, and that's such vague language. Well, if it could cause an evacuation, we should deny it. That's-
Well, that doesn't mean.
And to me, an evacuation of a childcare center is a lot different than the evacuation of the hospital.
Or a long-term
Like-
care facility.
Yeah,
You talk about at risk, go to a at-care facility that has Alzheimer's.
or like how quickly, you know,
That's
we also don't
totally
have large
different story.
childcare centers here in this county.
No.
Well, it doesn't say one word about your water supply, your gas line.
Right,
So maybe we should include in that language to minimize offsite impacts to critical congregate facilities, including and critical infrastructure facilities, including,
And natural resources.
and yeah. So include in there, minimize offsite impacts to critical infrastructure and natural resources.
Interesting, Capo has to be 1,000 feet from a residential structure. This is only 330 feet.
Mhm.
Oh, what has to be 1,000 feet?
An animal. Yeah, it has to be
Like a
1,000 feet.
chicken farmer.
Did you get all of that?
I typed in included with critical infrastructure, at the end of the statement,
Yeah.
cause for, conditional permit denial is include critical infrastructure and natural resources
Mhm.
that are affected.
I like that.
Okay, protection of agricultural and irrigated lands. That'll, fine to me.
Seems pretty logical to me.
Who determines if it's prime?
There's a designation in the NRCS maps.
There are several more sections. Do we wanna keep going for the night? Or pause here and revisit?
Well, we're about halfway through
Yeah,
to look at it logically.
We could, yeah, and would you like us to provide, an online Google Drive version of this where you could write in comments or that'll?
I think
That
would
might be
just help,
really
yeah.
helpful, yeah, that'd be really
Each
helpful.
have a Word version and you put your own, or you want to?
I like the Google,
I like the
thing.
It'll like display our name.
Yeah,
Just like.
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think that would.
Yeah, I think if we could get through some of it
okay.
before, at least so we know where we wanna kind of flag and concentrate versus, okay, that all looks fine. We don't
Right.
need to rehash it.
The only point of order I bring up about one of the sections that we have a certain resource present that might not be here on the next one
Mhm.
is the emergency operation plan. That's
Okay.
highly tied into the emergency operations.
Great,
management.
yeah, that's the next one. Should we get through that and then call it?
Sounds good.
Sorry, you're gonna.
I'll go ahead and read it. Emergency operation plan. The applicant shall prepare and submit an emergency operations plan for review by the county and fire protection district. At a minimum, the EOP shall contain the elements identified in section 4.3.2.144 of standard 855 NFPA. Number two, are you familiar with that, Chris? Do you know what that's in? The Delta County Office of Emergency Management shall be the responsible entity for coordinating review of the EOP with involved stakeholders, including but not limited to fire districts, law enforcement, public health, and local emergency planning committee. Site and project specific EOP amendments may be required by OEM when such amendments are necessary for the protection of public safety. Public safety review agencies have the authority to request amendments, additions, and or modifications to submitted EOPs to ensure the applicant's operating plan and safety standards are reasonable and comply with the capabilities and needs of local first responders for public safety. Failure on behalf of the applicant to make recommended changes or provide feedback to the review agencies may result in a determination that the site is unsuitable for the location and in conflict with public health and safety.
Do you wanna make the same change as you did before, from the 2023 edition to the most current? There's a few sections.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to do that across the board.
And also just, they just put out the 2026 version this month.
It's not.
But
Well,
other-
Chris, does that all sound good to you?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not familiar with 855, but since it's for these facilities, that makes sense because the other standards for emergency operations plan for a city or county is completely different. This is a standard focused on these facilities, so. The whole point of this is to be able to have all this responders, stakeholders that would be involved in responding to one of these thermal runaway that have input before one of these goes in thermal runaway, so we have plans, procedures, and some facilities like this that have hazards, well, the fire department can take care of it. Well, local fire department's capabilities are not the same as Weld County or something where they have a ton of industry, and we don't want them to just come in and assume the fire department has all these fancy hazmat response capabilities when they don't.
That section of the code says procedures for safe shutdown, de-energizing or isolation of equipment and systems under emergency conditions to reduce the risk of fire, electric shock, and personal injuries, and for safe startup following cessation of emergency conditions. That's one condition under that section of the NFPA. Now, there is procedures for inspection and testing of associated alarms, interlocks, and controls. Number three, procedures for to be followed in response to notifications of system alarms or out of range conditions that could signify potentially dangerous conditions, including shutting down equipment, summoning service or repair personnel, and providing agreed upon notification to fire department personnel if required. Emergency procedures to be followed in the case of a fire, explosion, release of liquids or vapors, damage to critical moving parts or other potentially dangerous conditions. Number 5, response considerations similar to a safety data sheet, SDS, that will address response safety concerns and extinguishment when the SDS is not required. Number 6, procedures for dealing with ESS equipment damaged in a fire or other emergency event, including contact information for personnel qualified to safely remove damaged ESS equipment from a facility. Number 7, other procedures as determined necessary. But anyway, I think that's gonna be a pretty good citation.
All right. So staff will send out a version that we can comment on.
Yep.
Digitally, and we'll pick back up when
Yeah.
we have another time. Is there are there any applications on the books for upcoming meetings?
No.
No, okay.
I don't have one either. Thanks for asking.
That's Andy's authority on that.
You don't have one?
She knows what's on our board.
I don't know if you're gonna have anything for a bit, really.
Okay, so should we continue to it seems like we can at least do one more meeting where we continue to tackle this while it's fresh.
Yeah.
And then sounds like the BOCC is probably gonna kind of pause work on their end on any land use code updates.
Yeah, they might do like a back and forth like they do with that from us, get us on these with you.
Mhm.
But for motioning for adoption, there's a weight on that.
Our next,
They're not gonna act on any change, on any,
They're not gonna update the land use code, make revisions for a little while longer.
oh.
So we're thinking October 8th is our next meeting to try to wrap this up here, what we're doing now, since there's
October 8th
nothing
be our
on
next
our
meeting.
calendars,
Okay.
right? So I'm just gonna put in here a wrap up of the.
We do have a couple of well, they're clients cases that are getting public, so be careful if if you get involved with individuals that are part of that.
Mhm.
Get, too much conversation about it in case they have to come through the PC for a review.
That's right.
Just the option. And there's a lot of information about these that are getting published in papers and radio interviews and,
Mhm.
if you just I don't know what more to say. I want to be careful here, but I just, not altogether accurate.
Okay.
Maybe is what I could say. These, just to get some code compliance. I bet you meant about our meetings. Yeah, I mean, they're gonna get airtime and your members of the community that may have a relationship with some people, so just be careful.
Okay.
Cause they may come through the planning commission.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? Anyone want to add anything to future agendas?
Mm-mm.
I will not be here. I'll be out of town the week of the 8th.
All right.
Now, the 22nd I'm out. If we have a meeting that I had sent you guys, I just want to make sure you got that well in advance. I have a training in out of state.
All right, yeah, Todd, I feel like you have a lot of valuable feedback here, so if you don't mind adding digital comments, if you see anything that needs addressing, that would be helpful. All right, with that, we ready to,
I think Chuck just signed.
Chuck, did you have anything you want to?
I could make a
This-
few comments, but I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
And I'll use thumbnails.
Oh, oh.
You guys made reference and all of your time and all of your work and all of your efforts very valuable. And we lost half of a planning commission once before over the commissioners not listening and running away. I think you guys should work on, at least you should have two people that sit on that same planning commission to rebut, because the commissioners sometimes don't even read it. And you're talking about, it's gonna be a full-time job for Everett. And every 6 months, these battery things are gonna change. I put a lot of time into it. I won't go into that, but they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to protect all their pertinent patents and all their secret things that are going on. If one of these things blows up, we're gonna have to have a full-time fire department because it's gonna be catastrophic. Just talking to the people that have been through it. It's not a thing like we're gonna throw it, boom, it goes off. It's gonna destroy the whole community. It's not gonna be like we know it now where it's casual.
Mhm.
You know, it's a very serious thing. And when someone won't give you an answer, it's usually not a good sign. You know, so, you guys have, you know, you have a lot of input and a lot of time put in all this stuff. So make them sit in and kind of listen to this, of what's going on. I could talk about 5 or 6 things. I don't think now's the time. I can talk about another time.
Yeah.
But it's the same deal. I'm seeing it over and over. I've been going to these meetings for 3 years. Just to kind of get your finger on the pulse. And all your time is valuable. I mean, you can be home playing with your new baby. What did you name
What did I name my baby? Her name is Iris.
it? Oh, good. Congratulations. In advance, congratulations.
Thanks.
So there's a lot of things we can all be doing, but this isn't gonna go away because as they change this, every 6 months, you're gonna have to review this solar battery storage thing. Cause it's gonna change that fast. And nobody knows what really the answer is. I mean, if it blows up, they don't know if 1 will blow, 2 will blow, 3 will blow. It's not, and the scary thing is it's not if, it's when. You know, so maybe no is the right answer. I don't know. You know, gotta start somewhere, but you know, don't put yourself in a situation where there's gonna be a lot of money spent if one of these things comes in and blows up. And it's from what I can see, nobody wants to, it's a paralysis and it's, there's a name for it, where you can't get your hand in your pocket. Did you ever hear that one? Well, everybody's gonna spend a lot of money and you gotta take that all into consideration. And my last question is, we're having a meeting on the 22nd, or you guys are having a meeting on the 22nd of October is the next one.
October 8th is
October
the-
8th is our next meeting. October 22nd is a regularly scheduled meeting. We have yet to see if there's anything on the agenda for that meeting.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. All right, with that, I'll close the meeting.
Thank you, my dear. June.